Hey, you're listening to Rising into Mindful Motherhood. I'm your host, Dr. Katie Wood. I'm a barefoot mama bear, pharmacist, integrative fertility health coach, and lover of all things nature and animals. I'm on a mission to have intentional conversations about the good, the bad, and the ugly when it comes to fertility, pregnancy, postpartum, and beyond. My mindful guests and I will be talking about struggles, wins, natural wellness, and how we grow and transform as we enter motherhood. My background in healthcare has shown me how broken our medical system is. My own struggles to become pregnant has shown the lack of support for mamas to be, the lack of guidance for women to have a nourishing and vibrant pregnancy, the isolation, mom guilt, and all the things we hold after bringing baby earthside. I want this platform to be a place where women can feel connected, safe, and supported to share and hear their stories. A place to use our voice to discuss and advocate about what we need and deserve as mothers. So let's dive in, shall we? Hello and welcome to Rising into Mindful Motherhood. I'm really looking forward for our conversation today. I'll be chatting with Roseanne, who is an entrepreneur and fitness instructor. She'll be sharing with us about her pregnancy journeys and what has led to her miscarriages and just her experience along the way and insight she has gained. So welcome, Roseanne. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you. Well, first off, just I guess a little bit background, about me. I've been with my husband almost 7 years. We have, or well, he has a almost 18-year-old son, so my stepson. And we got married pre-pandemic in June of 2019. And we had always wanted to start a family, and we decided as soon as we got married we were going to start trying, and it happened much faster than I expected. I always remember hearing advice from friends and other women just saying, oh, be prepared, it's going to take 6 months to a year.
Mm-hmm.
But that's their version, that's what they know, that's what
Mm-hmm.
they're used to. So I guess I just thought, well, it'll happen when it's meant to happen. And it happened really fast. And I I found out pretty early on, and I was nervous, scared, but mostly just beyond excited. This is what we wanted. It was very intentional. And I was just very excited. I think I found out around 5.5, 6 weeks. So obviously my pregnancy was confirmed. And then around probably 8 weeks, this was probably going to be right before I had my first official appointment at Kaiser. And I just remember sitting at my desk, and I just kind of felt this pop, like just
Mm-hmm.
something just didn't kind of feel right. And I just started to get, a little crampy. And then, I went to the bathroom down the hall from my office, and I had just noticed I was bleeding, and quite a lot. And for me, that just brought on complete panic. And I think all I remember is just texting my coworker to bring me my purse. And I kind of just like told her what was going on really quickly, but I was in such panic mode that I just got on the phone and was just like, I'm going to drive myself to Kaiser, which was, not that far from where I was working.
Mm-hmm.
And I called my husband, and then it was just a matter of getting an appointment, which in that case, a walk-in was not, um, was not available. So I think if I remember, I just kind of had to sit there and just know that I was bleeding, but I had to wait.
Mm-hmm.
And that, I think, was like the worst feeling of I had to wait. But I didn't really equate that I was having a miscarriage.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
And some people would say, oh my gosh, how did you just not know? And I think at that time I was also just kind of like in baby, heaven, that I was going to be a mother. And I eventually got into the OBGYN, and basically they told me, after doing an ultrasound, that nothing had developed. Like it was literally just a cluster of cells, and I was miscarrying. And that was really, not only was it very just upsetting, incredibly sad, and just like traumatic, but I think it just felt much heavier because I just felt it wasn't supposed to be that way in some weird way. Or you just don't want to believe it can happen to you.
Exactly.
And I think I had done what I felt was the preconception work. I had already been off birth control. I had been taking a prenatal. I had gotten the clearance, from my doctor to, start trying prior. And some people might, listen to this and go, oh my God, you didn't, try for, too long. That's expected. But, for me, I think it was kind of like a rude awakening to what can happen, and that a positive, pregnancy test does not always equate an actual baby. And that was a big, big, like, shock. Not even a shock, more of like a lesson, because I was just like, why me? Like, why? Not that I think like, I'm the greatest, thing ever to cross the earth, but I just, felt, why me? And it took a really long time to get over that. And I think a lot of that just turned into just fear and just the shocking reality that that's a possibility. Yeah. That my first pregnancy ended in loss. And then just, I guess, really having the courage to try again, and to really be certain trying again, and knowing that there is a possibility that I could have a baby, that it's not just I had a miscarriage, that's the end all be all, and I'm just never going to have children. So I think for me, it was a very emotional, very, very eye-opening experience, completely from what I felt maybe I could expect, how I envisioned my life to be, and also just kind of realizing that, 1 out of 4 women do experience miscarriage, and I happen to be that one, and one of millions who have gone, through this. But we don't talk about that. We don't talk about, miscarriage. And I think also just going through that experience, and this also kind of, might relate more to my second two, is sometimes the invalidation that comes with miscarriage. The invalidation of, well, at least it didn't grow. You can try again. At least it was nothing. It happens all the time to women, kind of almost like a no big deal.
Yeah.
It's not a big deal. It happened. And then I think sometimes, not all, but I just had the experience of probably not always talking to the right audience, or at least not being able to maybe find people to relate to this because they have never gone through it. So of course it's easy for people to only speak to their experience because they have no connection to the one you just had, which for some people, unfortunately, it does come off as invalidating and cruel. Just relax. You'll get pregnant again. My pregnancy was easy. All I did was XYZ and it happened. Well, that's unfortunately that's just not true for everybody. And in this case, as my doctor said, it just basically was chromosomal issues. Just nothing, developed. But that's still hard to, go through that wave of happiness, excitement, and then really wanting to tell everybody, not being quite there yet, and then it kind of all being taken away from you. And I think a lot of that just kind of really was maybe a little bit more of a rude awakening into maybe the expectations I had. What I thought I knew, I didn't know. And what I thought would never happen to me is actually happening to me. So I think after that, just, after that loss, we went through the pandemic less than 6 months later. And the pandemic, as I'm sure many can relate, was not kind to a lot of people. And it was very difficult, for me in terms of not only just dealing with that grief, but building the courage to try again and to, let go of this notion, which I carried for a long time, is that there's something wrong with me. There's something I ate, something I did to deserve a miscarriage. There's something wrong with me. And then you start to kind of get a little bit more into that, what is the word? Hypochondriac. Like you always think like something is wrong with you. And I'm not anybody who is going through that. I don't use that word, to insult anyone, but I just think that it really started to kind of mostly mess with my mental health. And I just carried that shame and that guilt for a long time. And then going into the pandemic, I was in a great job, wonderful job. And that company just kind of, kept downsizing. And then eventually I was at a point where my full-time job became like 15 hours a week and I was losing my medical benefits. So I had made a choice to, kind of jump out and take on this new job. And we had already been trying to conceive again. Obviously, nothing had happened yet. And then we kind of took a break and then it happened. I got pregnant again in January of 2021. No, December of 2021. And that was my second pregnancy. And I won't lie, I was very scared, excited, but very scared. Even though I had, done a lot of internal work, a lot of preconception work with changing my diet, managing my stress, or attempting to, I went into that pregnancy with a lot of fear, but also trying very hard to manage and to just kind of deal with all of the life happenings at the same time. And one of those life happenings, and I'm not going to dive too much deep into this, but I ended up working at a company for the first 5-6 months of that pregnancy with a supervisor who did not support me being pregnant at all. And to the level of micromanaging, example, my bathroom usage. And like waiting for me outside the door to say I should not be in there more than a minute or two. And if you've been pregnant before, you all know how much you got to pee. Oh, man. So, and that, I'm here trying to just trust that my body is healthy The baby was healthy. Everything had looked good. And he was growing. He was moving. And basically, everything was good. I had very minimal, symptoms. I had barely any morning sickness, just the good old round ligament pain and putting on obviously some weight, a little ravenous here and there. But overall, it was a relatively easy pregnancy. And I don't say that to say, hey, look at me, I had an easy pregnancy, or anything like that. But the biggest issue for me was the mental health, the toll that my mental health was taking by being in this job and being pregnant, and also being unsupported and treated as if I got pregnant on purpose to, kind of mess with the company and to mess with my job. And obviously I do not work for that organization anymore, but it took a lot of work to manage my mental health in that pregnancy. And I'm grateful that I had an amazing therapist to help kind of guide me through that process. And my husband is just beyond, amazing and supportive. And obviously I came home and just told him my mental health, our unborn son, is much more important than a job. I'm going to give 3 weeks notice because I'm generous, and I'm going to help them figure out their stuff, and I'm going to leave. And like I said, the pregnancy itself was easy. I wasn't dealing, with morning sickness. And I was just reaching that point probably at the 16, 17 week mark of this is happening. I'm moving. I'm almost at the halfway point. I'm going to be a mother. He's fine. He's thriving there. Everything looks good. All the tests, came back negative. For a lot of things, I worked really hard to manage my blood pressure and my blood sugar and a lot of other things, and really tried to make good choices, eat healthy, move, meditate, and really just trust my body that my body is doing it and everything is going to work out. And I was just, at that point of trust, this is really happening. I'm feeling good and I'm feeling confident. What happened to me the previous year doesn't mean that this is going to happen. And probably, I want to say a week before the end of my 3-week period, my water broke. And one of the things that probably led up to this, but probably does not have any relation to why it happened, but from just the stress of my job, I had also developed shingles in the previous month. And a very small case, but there was that. And a big part, of that pregnancy that I also totally forgot to mention is before all of the stuff I just talked about happened. And I'm sorry to kind of jump back, but it all ties together, I promise. So for the listeners, I hope they're following me when I say this. When I hit the 8-week mark of this second pregnancy, I started bleeding again. So that was basically just a pushback to memory lane of what happened the first time. I panicked and I was bleeding a lot. And at the time, I was between jobs and I had no health insurance, which some people would like listen to this and probably go, oh my God, what's wrong with you? But I didn't have health insurance. I went to a local clinic in which I was turned away while bleeding on their floor. And they basically just said I needed to go to the ER. I knew what was happening. I kind of just had this moment of clarity of just, I know what's happening. I'm just going to let it pass. And I did. And I really grieved for like 2 weeks, thinking I had miscarried. I was certain that I did. And that's with no medical intervention whatsoever. I go back to the doctor when my insurance kicks in. And now, looking back on everything I said earlier about it being an easy pregnancy, I'm at the 10-week mark and I find out I'm still pregnant. I had miscarried the twin, most likely. I had suffered a subchorionic hematoma. And when they did the ultrasound, they just saw a second, very, very small, maybe the size of like a grape, gestational sac just kind of floating there on the left, and my son on the right. And that was, I think, another just very defining moment of just, I guess God is good. And he's here. He's present in this, room. And yeah, I was shocked, completely shocked. And while there is no way to really determine what happened, that is probably just more of a theory of what happened, is that I miscarried a twin. Or the twin just never even developed past a certain stage. But I was 10 weeks pregnant. And I was, like I said, I was shocked. So now we jump back in, fast forward. I had the easy pregnancy, started to feel really good and confident in the 16 to 17 week mark. Like, this is really going to happen. And then I jump back to my story is, when I hit 20 weeks, my water broke, and I basically went to my 20-week appointment, and they basically just said that I had lost a lot of fluid and my son had a 20 to a 30% chance of survival. And at that point, I would most likely go into spontaneous labor from anywhere the next few hours or maybe the next week or two. Maybe a very small chance of making it to 28 weeks. Very small. And the doctors laid out all the options, and one of those options is medical termination, knowing at this point he is not going to develop anymore, or it's just a matter of time before I go into labor. So do I want to put myself out of my misery and have them do the procedure to end it for medical reasons? I chose not to do that. While I knew the chances were very small, my heart, my agreement, with my husband, I felt the right thing to do is to just let him come on his terms. Mm-hmm. No intervention. And I thankfully went into labor within just a matter of hours. It was painful, but it was also very, very, very messy. And I'm grateful that I made it, to the hospital, and I was taken in. And, from there, they just basically said that I was gonna, have to give birth. And again, they offered the medical termination. And as the doctor said, some women just want to be out of their misery and just have it done. That wasn't going to be me. I did not feel right about doing that. And while I did not want to experience necessarily any more of the pain of the labor, I did take the epidural. It took about, I want to say about 36 hours of labor or failed attempts to dilate. They did the balloon. We did exercise, and it just wasn't happening. And in the moment, very emotionally painful to just kind of see him on the monitor. He's moving around and everything's, fine. There's a heartbeat, but just knowing he's going to come out dead. Or he's in the process of that happening. And I think I kept getting pushed to terminate, which I just kept saying no.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure, I know people who have gone through this exact, scenario, but my heart just told me that that's just not what I want to do. And then it got more into the complicated, like if it doesn't happen, you run this risk, infections. It could be a number of things. And I remember my husband, holding my hand, and we had done acupuncture, before as a couple. We had done individual acupuncture, and he knew that if he touched the area between my index and my thumb and just kind of massaged that area, that could generally help induce labor, or at least help move things along. And honestly, within a minute, maybe even two of him just even squeezing and massaging that area, my son came out. And I chose to not see him. They put up a barrier in front of me while I finished delivering. And that was a choice, between me and my husband. We just decided that that's what was best for us in that moment. There has been some regret about that, but we just couldn't bear seeing him. And we have his footprints, but that's it. And that's pretty much just, what happened. And I was in the hospital another, night, just, make sure everything was okay. And I went home, and I can't really even describe the feeling, but it was just a general feeling of complete and utter exhaustion. The life force, completely sucked out of me, and I felt empty. I mean, I had nothing to show for what I went through the last 20 weeks. And that's really hard. And I think, it's really hard to describe it. And I think it's very hard for people to understand it unless they have been through it. Mm-hmm. And I don't say that to be mean, but I know for me, I experienced a lot of, I don't want to say backlash, but I just experienced a lot of, oh gosh, what's the word I'm looking for? Invalidation, surrounding pregnancy, just kind of well, you can try again. And also hints that I did something. And I had a friend at the time also who which, made it even more hard, is we were pregnant at the same time. We had been friends for 15 years. We had due dates 1 or 2 days apart. And she ultimately went home with a baby on our due date. I didn't. And she was an example of a friend. And I don't say this to trash her. And I doubt she, would listen to this. But I think just for me, that was really hard. Just have a friend who not only didn't understand what I was going through, but as a good friend chose to hint that I did something to deserve that loss. And obviously that friendship is, no more for, many reasons and other things that kind of transpired after that. But I think that that was also just kind of a big awakening and a new awareness in the time I've spent grieving and just obviously just making sense of everything that happened, is just how we don't talk about loss. Mm-hmm. We don't talk about miscarriage enough. We don't always, and when I say we, I'm not saying everyone, because there's a lot of people out there who do understand, but just in general, there's kind of like this mystery to, I guess, miscarriage, to loss. And I think that there's this part of society that we don't talk about enough, and women, or not even just women, but people just are either uncomfortable with the topic and they feel like they need to say something, but typically what they say isn't always helpful. At least that's what I went through. And I think that that was really hard to face a lot of those comments, not necessarily the invalidation, but the hinting that I deserved it in some way. And especially for those who just knew how stressed out I was with this job, and this job, or the supervisor at this job, just made work so incredibly difficult for me. And on top of that, she wrote me up for going to a prenatal appointment, so that stress alone, and then feeling comfortable to share that experience with people, only for them to kind of throw it back at me and say, well, you were just too stressed out with work. That's why it happened to you. And that's not the case. And as someone who's already had 2 losses, the shame and guilt I carried, the shame and guilt many women carry, is already hard enough. And to just, I guess, hope that people would be more supportive, or at least the ones I chose or expected to understand did not understand, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. Because again, I will affirm, I have the most amazing, wonderful, supportive husband. My family is insanely supportive. I had friends who knew what happened, but they didn't ask. They just knew what to do. They started the meal train. They brought over gifts. Mm-hmm. My mom paid our rent for the month to help us just not stress. And I think, for me also, just going through that loss, and I have to be careful how I say this, because I've said this once, and some people have said, oh, well, you never wanted to be pregnant in the first place. I feel like from a deeper mental, spiritual, emotional level, that loss, or that second loss, taught me more about myself, but it also revealed more health issues that were under the surface as a result of what I went through. I developed stage 1 endometriosis. Thankfully, it was caught early, very early, but that's taken almost a year and a half of my life and has prevented me from trying to conceive again. And then, of course, I was the woman who always believed, nope, can't have kids past I'm 40. I'm too old, and I'm 39. I'll be 40 this next August. But I've reshaped my thinking, around that, because I know many women who have had pregnancies well into their mid 40s, totally successful, healthy, and very happy. But I think, for me, that whole experience not only brought, more awareness to my own personal health, to my own mental health, but also I learned, so much, not only from the experience, but just everything that it takes to become pregnant.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, it's amazing that anyone gets pregnant with all the variables that have to be in place for it to happen. People just say, oh, it's just luck, just relax, it'll happen. And, I hear those statements and I don't, wave my losses around like some flag, but like I said earlier, a positive test doesn't always result in a full-term pregnancy. And I had to go through 2 losses to really understand that, regardless of how healthy I was, regardless of, anything going on, and regardless of how healthy the baby was. And even almost 3 months after it happened is when, I had a follow-up appointment, and they basically said they have no answer for me. They don't know why it happened. They have a theory, but they don't know what had happened. And that theory was just basically that second gestational sac may or may not have been infected. It could have been from the shingles. I don't know. But that second gestational sac was just basically, boink, 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 tapping the other gestational sac, therefore thinning out the lining. And that ultimately is what caused my bag of wires to rupture. But that's a theory. They don't know at all. And that was one of the hardest parts, is not having an answer. And it's taken, going through endometriosis, really trying to look things more from a holistic way, and also reshaping my thinking, just about how I, think about myself, how I approach my well-being, how I approach my food, my movement, and then what's going on in my body now, and what I would need to do to support or create the most optimal environment to conceive again. And it's taken me, a long time to really understand all of those pieces that go into a pregnancy, but then also having endometriosis, I think, humbles you in a lot of ways. And I'm grateful that I obviously did not have a worse version of it, but my heart goes out to all the women who have gone through endometriosis and have far worse cases than I did. But it was also just very hard to know that that has prevented me from conceiving for almost the past year and a half. And here I am at the end of it, and I'm about to come off medication. And as of this past July, my endometriosis was gone, but I'm still waiting on the results of another biopsy to determine if it's fully gone and if I'm able to go off medication. And that alone has been a process. And of course, feeling like I've wasted another, well, not even wasted, but another year has gone by without me trying to conceive and ultimately just wanting to fulfill my dream of being a mother. And it really teaches you to, kind of put things on hold. But I think for me, it's also recognizing my body was maybe not with the pregnancy, but I don't feel safe. My body does not feel 100% prepared to take on a pregnancy. And there's a lot of reasons, for that, which obviously I'm not going to share, but that's my choice. And I'm okay with that choice. But that doesn't change the fact that I still experience those day-to-day, triggers of, grief, seeing baby stuff and seeing other, women with kids or friends, family, whoever. And it, comes and goes. Some days I will, see baby clothes and I won't cry. And then 2 days later, I'll see something related to babies and I'll cry. But I've just kind of had to learn that that's been my grief journey. And for any woman out there, I've always just kind of, just, at least for me in therapy, is just own your journey. Whatever that looks like for you, you're not wrong. If, you can't go to baby showers, that's okay. If you can't, conceive based on medical issues, infertility, whatever, it might be, it's okay to grieve. And it's okay to actually have, feelings. And it sucks that, so many people, I guess, just don't understand some of the things that women go through when it comes to miscarriage and loss. And I know I'm not speaking about everybody, but everyone's going to have a different experience, with that. But I think, for me, I can look back on it and really say I grew some really thick skin. And that's very hard to do because I'm a very sensitive person in general. And I'm a very empathetic, being. And sometimes it's hard to be that because you feel everything, not only for yourself, but you feel for others as well. And trying to kind of create that space between, yourself and others, maintaining healthy boundaries. But I think it was also very easy for me to retreat inward and to not share my story because of the fear that I was going to be harshly judged, for it. And I appreciated like your group, for example, just in terms of just the open dialogue that, you created in your group. I'm part of a couple other, groups, but I know your approach has been definitely, at least what I've gauged, has very, holistic and kind of looking, at pregnancy, from all angles, but also very welcoming and wanting to, help other women break through some of those barriers that we don't often, talk about. And I know for me that I kept my experience very close to me. I didn't talk to too many people, about it because it was too painful to talk about. But I, the fact that I can make it through this conversation without crying, you know, I don't want to say it's necessarily a testament to strength, but I've found the more that I share about it, it's been healing for me. But I've also valued the women that have felt comfortable to talk to me, about their losses, or maybe they went through something very similar to me, or they, just felt compelled, to talk to me for whatever reason.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, I guess I can just say that for me, pregnancy has been a wild journey, but I just kind of crossed this threshold of, my endometriosis is gone, or at least that's what I'm hoping this final biopsy will be, is an affirmation that yes, it's gone. That's when I feel like I'm going to really start stepping more into what conceiving looks like again for me, and the timing, of that. I think there's a few other things that I want to explore with my health before I start trying, but ultimately I I want to hope that my improving my health, improving my mind, my spirit, and along with that, my hope is that there is an open window for me to conceive again. But it's going to take a lot of, I would say, work on my end. I still, very much want to be a mother. And, some people have said, if I went through what you went through, I just wouldn't try. I would just adopt. And that's where I say is just trying to find the courage and to, put faith into the universe that that is still very much a possibility for me, but trying to not, talk too much about, it's not going to happen for me. It's not going to be happen for me. But that whole next step is, it's a work in progress. Best way to put it.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's my pregnancy story, a work in progress.
Well, thank you for bravely sharing your story. I know that so many women can relate to what you went through. And like you've said, everyone's experience is unique to them, and you have to own your story. But by you sharing, another woman who is keeping what happened to her so close to her, maybe now she'll feel more open to share her story, and that can help her healing process. So thank you for sharing that. And I'm so sorry that you went through that, and that, you know, society, we are so blocked off from our feelings. And growing up, we weren't allowed to really feel our feelings. So I think, I know you had kind of mentioned it earlier, people are just generally uncomfortable to talk about things like this. Not everyone, but a lot of people are. And I think a lot of people don't know what to say. And it's really
No,
hard, but it's hopefully changing. Hopefully this dialogue will change, and people, you know, sure, you know, most people won't go through something like this, but if they could just sit and imagine what that could feel like, I think having that empathy and compassion, we need that in this world. And I'm a highly empathetic being myself, so my heart just breaks for you and any woman and any family who has gone through this, because that is a traumatic experience. I mean, just all of the details that you gave us. Like, I had another woman on who went through a traumatic loss as well, and it's, well, a couple of women, and it's just, you hear the story, but when you take a step back and it's like, wow, like this full picture of what you've gone through, and you've gone through it
Yeah.
twice, like it does take courage to have to feel comfortable to be able to try again, because there is so much fear present. But it sounds like you have really cultivated a lot of awareness in yourself, mentally, physically, emotionally, and that is hopefully really allowing you to heal and kind of move on to the next step for you. So,
No, that's, it's accurate. And I hope that there is more dialogue around loss. And I also, have to just, for me, respect that, like, I have friends who have gone through far worse situations with loss, and they are not the person for me to talk to about that subject. Not because they don't care, but it's hard for them too. But then, you know, we live in also a very social media, driven, world. And there's a lot of women out there, posing as their pregnancies, their lives are perfect. They're having kids right and left. And you know what? There are women out there who have had picture perfect pregnancies, no issues, no complications, and they're lucky. They're very lucky. And I am glad that they were able to, have that experience. And I think, having those experiences kind of also rubbed in your face, at least for me, your perfect pregnancy doesn't mean I'm going to have a perfect, one, or by your definition. And I do hope that people become more comfortable to talk about it. And I hope that any woman listening to this, when you air it, will feel comfortable, even if it's just, for a second, to just feel comfortable to share her story, to own it. And, but also to realize it's not her fault.
mm-hmm.
And that's something I think that, we forget quite often. It's very easy to fault people and to look for a reason for something. And it's very easy to blame the mother
Mm-hmm.
or the mother to be. And obviously I wish that would stop. But I think creating community, really finding someone that you can relate to, whether that's one person, a therapist, a community of women, a practitioner, anyone. I think getting help through whatever means after going through something like that, and having the courage to ask for help, is, I think, the biggest thing you can do for yourself after a situation like that. And no loss is like, it doesn't matter if it was 8 weeks, 12 weeks, 20 weeks, 30, it doesn't matter. To me, it's still a loss. And that life, that life force that you carried with you deserves to be honored. And I think some women do sometimes forget that. So my 8-week loss and my 20-week loss,
Mm-hmm.
still something to me. So
I completely agree. Yeah. Well, thank you so much. Where can the audience learn more about you or connect with you?
I am all over. I have my own Etsy shop on Etsy.com. It's just RO Creations and Prints, which stands for Roseanne Olivia, my first and middle name. I'm also on LinkedIn. I'm a recruiter for a nonprofit. I'm on Facebook and I'm on Instagram. My handle is Roseanne Olivia, and I always welcome people for me to connect with me on any of those, platforms. And I'm happy to talk to anyone who might have, further questions about this episode or just wants to start a dialogue. I'm open to any of that.
Amazing. Yes. And I looked at your Etsy store and you had the cutest journals and affirmations on there, which I think is perfect for any woman going through fertility struggles, any woman who maybe has had a loss, or if you're pregnant, new to motherhood, affirmations can always be so helpful. And of course, journaling as well, no matter where you are in your journey. So thank you so much for bravely sharing your story with us today, Roseanne.
No, thank you for having me today, Katie. I really appreciate it, and I look forward to hearing the episode air.
Yes, me too. Thank you for tuning in today. Make sure you follow and leave a rating so we can connect with more mamas, and I will see you on the next episode.